and welcome back to the 6-5 Summit. I'm Shelley Kramer, one of the founding partners of Futurum Research, and on behalf of my team at Futurum and the team at Moor Insights and Strategy, welcome. We're glad to have you. In this spotlight session, Moor Insights' Patrick Moorhead is joined by Kumar Sreekanti, the Chief Technology Officer and Head of Software for HPE. Their conversation today centers around the challenging landscape that most enterprises face today and the software and services that HPE is building to help meet the needs of its customers. This is going to be a fantastic conversation, so let's go hear what they have to say.
Hi, this is Pat Moorhead with Moor Insights and Strategy at the 6-5 Summit, and I am here with HPE Chief Technology Officer and Head of Software, Kumar Sreekanti. Kumar, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Patrick. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for coming to the 6-5 Summit. We really appreciate that, and it's great to see you.
Thanks for having me, and I love to have it. It's always exciting to talk to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, keep saying things like that. So let's just jump right in here. Everybody is talking digital transformation, and I think I use that word so many times I even get sick of it. But what are you seeing from your customers in regards to digital transformation?
Before I say what the customers are thinking, let me just see how I internalize it so that we'll have the same vocabulary. I see digital transformation as modernizing the applications so that you can serve your customer, whatever the industry you're doing. And second is figuring out the age of insights from your data. And Antonio uses this, we are moving from collecting the data to finding the age of insights. And number three is making your infrastructure invisible, meaning I can run local, I can run in the hypervisor, I can run somewhere else as a hyper cloud. So if you combine those three, that's what I believe is the digital transformation, and every company is becoming a software company, right? I think there's another metaphor that we have used. Tesla is a software company that makes cars, and Uber is a software company that rents you the cars. So I think that's the digital insight. So when I talk to the customers, they're grappling with all the three. I have 2,000 applications that have been written and have been running for the last 20 years, and which of them I modernize. Modernization predominantly refers to the containerization because it's a better way to utilize the underlying infrastructure. And the data insights generally refers to the AI. And then the making infrastructure invisible refers to the hybrid cloud in the sense that, so those are the three things they are thinking about, Patrick.
Yeah, and I love the element of making basically infrastructure invisible. And, even as we make it a little bit more complex, because we're not just talking about an on-prem data center or a cloud data center, we've got the edge. I mean, we have all of these things that we need to contend with. And it's funny, you talked about all these companies being software companies. I think in the future, and I think the most forward-thinking, look at their companies as IP companies or tech companies. Yeah. Like what separates a trucking company that is using the same brand of self-driving trucks, for example. But that's for another conversation. So HPE is was the original garage inventor. You see things in Silicon Valley, people who started in the garage. HP was the original. How do you keep that going at such a large company like HPE?
No, it's a very good question. So first thing that I always say, Patrick, is one of my goals is to put the garage back into HPE, meaning bring the innovation and continue the innovation. So I think Antonio has actually talked about this a little bit in the couple of summits that he's been with. Our North Star is providing pivoting the company as a service. And there are three elements that we see that is necessary in that space. One is what we call a fleet software. how do you build a large scale distributed systems, whether it's we bring the cloud to you or you run as a hybrid cloud. Second is the runtime software. And then third one is workload optimized using all our technologies. We have a phenomenal computing space, we have phenomenal storage, we have networking, we have our services technology, and bringing all of them together. So we created, that's why I have two jobs, as we were talking about the CTO and head of the software, and trying to bring that innovation, but just not for the innovation for innovation's sake, but bring the innovation to solve the customer problems. That's why we have announced the various cloud services on the top of the Green Lake so that customers can choose to run their applications on-prem or on the colo or on the hyperscalers.
Yeah, and in the context of what you just said, what I've been impressed with is at the rate of products, because I've been watching HP, then Hewlett Packard, then Hewlett Packard Enterprise for over 30 years, and the rate of products has definitely accelerated, and I've definitely noticed that. And what I'm looking forward to is with you coming in and applying some of these things, I'm expecting a lot more innovation. And we've talked a little bit about your agenda for this. And I think you call it silicon to cloud services that you're driving. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So what we, I'm a big believer in finding the right strategy for the right company with the right time. Because a strategy that might have been right for somebody 20 years ago may not be the right. So the strategy for us is we have these unique technologies we talked about. We build zero trust silicon, and we're building the Green Lake technologies. We have Esmeralda, we have a data fabric. So how do we bring all these unique technologies together so we can give a unified stack to the customer? What we believe is customers are looking for. The disaggregation days are over. I am not interested in putting these pieces together. I want a full solution. And then when I instantiate an application, I want to make sure it is secure. So is the underlying silicon secure? Is the operating system secure? Is the container secure? Is my networking secure? That's what we are bringing together. We are bringing together all these technologies so that we can provide unified cloud services on a stack that is secure from the top to the bottom.
Yeah, it is interesting. A lot of enterprise, a lot of CIOs I talk to this has gotten so complex, and the ability to stitch all these different things together is actually making them less secure.
Yes.
And I'm not even just talking about security products that are being stitched together, but whether it's containers with virtualization, whether it's functions or things like that. And then when you go outside of the data center with, let's say, using a combination of SaaS and then multi-cloud, edge, and your own data center, the complexity has to go down. And we're going to be really interested to see how businesses and technology evolves, where people are looking for a total solution.
Yeah, actually, I add one more. That's a very well put together, Patrick. I add one more thing. I used to call this day two operations. Back when I was a young engineer, if you give me Windows, next day I know how to use Windows Server or an ESX server or a Linux box. Today, if you give me a Spark ML library, I need probably a week or 10 days to figure out what. And then by the time I figured out, there's a new version there, right? So that's why the companies are focused on what are the business outcomes as opposed to the technologies, right? I want to solve, I have a lot of data, and data is the new oil. And I want to find insights from my data so I can serve my customer better. I can find more efficiencies. That's why an integrated stack that is secure, that gets me going from the day one, I think is a very important element for the customers, the way they talk to us.
And if I understand the layer cake, and I remember when we were actually in the office at the same time, you were going through your layer cake. the other key part that I know is true that you didn't bring up is these are open elements,
Yes.
meaning just integrated. A lot of times enterprises think that means lock-in.
Yeah.
But you've built Esmeralda and your stack on industry standard technology. So if a customer needs to blow the bolts or go somewhere else or integrate something in, we're not back to the 1986 version of IT.
Very well said, Patrick. For example, Esmeralda is 100% top of the trunk open source K8s, and it actually supports multiple versions of K8s. For example, as you know, CNCF, every day you'll have a new version, so the customers are worried about. So we actually built a very sophisticated control plane that actually supports, we want to support as many curated versions of it. Obviously, there's a limit on it. So you're absolutely right. Spiffy and Spire is another open source effort that HPE has been very focused on. Yeah, thanks for that additional point which you made. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So this is kind of a broad question, and we're going to use this digital transformation word again. I can't say if I love that or can't stand it, but let's use it again. No. What advice would you have for a customer today who says, tell me the best path to digital transformation? And I know you have different kinds of customers at different places, so there's not one. I know this, but I need you to generalize it for our audience.
It's a very good question, and it does get asked often in different ways. Some customers are more sophisticated than others, as you said. I go back to my three rudimentaries that if I am the CIO of a insurance company, let's say, I would look at my applications. That's the it's like if you want to reduce the electricity at home, you look at all your old refrigerators and the ones that are consuming 10 times more energy than it is, right? So you want to look at your applications. Are they serving my customers? Because your customer, the insurance company's customer, is changing as well, right? He's becoming, I call it Uberization of, I don't want to buy two cars, put in the garage, do oil change, and I'm going to press a button when I go on from point A to point B. So you need a different application. So first I will start with applications and where I am, which of those important to me, and how do I modernize them? Modernizing to me, as I said, most likely use the containers, run them on a more flexible environment. Second one I would tell them focus on is data. The sovereignty, the security, source of truth, where is your data? And then second thing I'll tell them within the data is data that is being generated today is so enormous, it never sees a human eye, never processed by the human eye. So it's generated by the machine, analyzed by the machine, but you have to look at the output of it, right? It's like Uber algorithm finding you that car,
right?
When you press the button, no human is involved, but two humans are connected at the very end, right?
Right.
So that's the finding the insights from the data. How do I use the data? And then third one is, where do I run my application? And I don't want to be stuck for edge versus data center versus the cloud. That's why we call it, we bring the edge to the cloud as a platform, as a service, right? So I will advise them to look at all the three, but perhaps in that order, if you have to force yourself, but I think all the three are necessary ingredients for them to get to that modernization.
Yeah, so I think that's sage advice, and obviously there's a lot of double clicks and drill downs into that, and it never ceases to amaze me how many applications, let's say a bank might have, or somebody who's been in business for 25 years, and I've talked to a lot of CIOs who have taken that approach. They prioritize their applications with which ones are strategic, which ones are not. And then some are, hey, we don't even really know how this is programmed very well. The programmer retired years ago. We're not going to touch this, and we're going to put it over here. But I've seen a lot of good thinking along those lines.
Yeah, indeed. I talked to a CEO of a bank which is probably 100 years old, and they told us they have 3,000 homegrown apps. And so far, they've done like 10, 15 containerized. So you got 2,985 of them still needs to be either retired or re-returned and modified to serve their customers better. Yeah, you are absolutely right. I think you said same. So you heard same thing that we are hearing as well.
So we talked a little about what to do, and I'd love to hear what you know not to do. So it's the contra of that. Do you have any thoughts about that?
It's a good question. I would say the generally a strategy. I used to say this all the strategy is what you choose not to do. What you choose to do falls out of what you choose not to do. But I think in this case, I would be very careful of jumping off and then say, I'm going to modernize all the applications overnight, right?
Right.
And the same thing with the data, right? Be careful with the data. Data is, especially machine generated data, is beyond control, right? I think there's a Berkeley professor I work with, and he used to say, the amount of data that you generate today is more than all the data you generated in the last 30 days, right? And so data is generated. So be very cognizant of the data, what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep and how it works. And then finally, be careful about walled gardens. Because if you get into the walled gardens, even though they may run open source versions, but you have to be very careful. That's how I think about it. But it's a good question, Patrick, by the way.
Yeah, and it's something, I always like the yin and the yang part of it. And, some people fall in love with the technology, or they fall in love with a company, and it ends up coming in and biting them at some point. I mean, I look at where we were 10 years ago and looking at all that's possible. I also think it's important that you align yourself with a company who is continually innovating. Back to the one of the first questions I asked you. So last question here. Time flies when we're having fun. What things should we expect from HPE over the next couple years? And if you want to drop some secret stuff in there, you can do that.
My boss will not be very happy. I can address that. I think you should expect continuous innovation around workload optimized cloud services. What we believe is we didn't talk much about it, Patrick, because we didn't. That's another large topic. I strongly believe as the applications become more AI intensive. Let me pick up AI versus CI/CD, right? Would you run an AI application that's highly GPU intensive or a TPU intensive on a generic processor? You probably don't want to. So when you instantiate an application that's a Spark ML or a TensorFlow library or Caffe or H2O, you want to instantiate that application on the top of a GPU optimized hardware. So we are working on these cloud services that will be part of the GreenLake, that will be provided workload optimized so that the customers understand how do you get the best out of your underlying hardware. And then you should expect from us varied services. As Antonio's North Star is, we want to be cloud edge to the cloud as a platform company. So we should expect the same kind of services on the edge, so that when you run it on the edge versus when you run it on your colo, you don't have as you pointed out, you want to have that invisibility.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I'm impressed at what HPE, when it gets on stage and makes these big proclamations. HPE was the first company talking about the hybrid cloud, and we're out of what I call the drunken sailor mode of it's public cloud or bust. Okay. Yeah. And now we're in kind of this normalcy where the hybrid cloud is one nobody is debating. if cloud will be hybrid. I think the only thing we're debating now is multi-cloud and how do we more easily connect these together. And HPE was also one of the first, if not the first, to have its own full stack. As well, which I'll admit, when you first started doing it, I was thinking, gosh, is this the right thing to do? And then it ended up being the right thing to do. And then this as a service thing, Antonio gets up and says, all our products are going to be as a service. People are like, what's this guy talking about? Now everybody is jumping on the as a service bandwagon. So I tune in to what HPE is going to say what's next, and I appreciate you sharing that with me. I think we're so early in the AI game, right? I mean, sure, there's a lot of consumer cloud services that use certain functions, but when it comes to the enterprise, we're just barely scratching the surface. I mean, and some of that AI is actually really just analytics, not machine learning or using some sort of machine learning type of algorithm. So excited.
Yeah, no, obviously, Discover is coming, so stay tuned. There's obviously Antonio and us, we'll all be there telling. And just on your AI comment, I could not agree with you more. AI is just at the beginning. In fact, I have a theory that there's not all the CPU in the world is not sufficient if the AI is fully turned. In fact, there's an algorithm somebody developed and say how much CPU cycle. AI is a very CPU intensive because it has to iterate and then to learn. There's a lot of opportunity there, both for our customers and for us to provide the platform.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to see how the edge plays into that, because with all the data being primarily created on the edge,
that's very true.
It really has to have most of its processing done there, because it's unaffordable to send data up to the mothership every time something needs to happen. So
no, I give the example, right? If you see, most of the Santa Clara County says that trucks are going to be the auto driven, and for insurance purposes, they can't throw away the data, but they have to process that data, and they can't upload fast enough, because if you look at all this, the amount of data these generate. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Let's spend some more time with each other talking about the future. I would love to do that, but our time is up here, and I just want to thank you so much for coming on the 6.5 and sharing your brilliance with our audience, Kumar.
Oh, thank you for having me, Patrick, and it's always nice to chat with you. Thank you.
Thanks. So this is the end of our segment here, and I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. This is Pat Moorhead with more insights and strategy from the 6.5 Summit with HPE's Head of Software and Chief Technical Officer, Kumar Sreekanti. So thank you very much.
Bye.